Hello. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good whatever, wherever you are in the world. I'm happy to see you. Let's get started. We're going to dive into some videos. I have something kind of cool. I was thinking that we would get in, respond to some parent-child estrangement videos, and someone who is very much like in the conversation around parent-child estrangement is the account Doormat Mom, and I've been asked to respond many a time, and I thought I would just jump into a couple of videos and see what we got here. Sound fun? I think it sounds fun. Let's do it. Okay. Bum, ba-dum, bum. Okay. Oh. Sorry, team. What's happening?
Community on this platform is that
boundary.
Sorry, team. Everyone was like, I can't hear the video. Now we should be able to.
cop-out in the biggest cop-out
Better?
in the world that I hear from the estranged adult child community on this platform is that they don't owe their parents anything. Yes, I'm going to say it. Yes, you do. You absolutely do. You owe your parents for bringing you into this world and keeping you alive. You owe them for the love they gave you, the caring they showed you, and the protection that they afforded you as they sent you on your way to live your life. And yes, you owe them, as keeping you alive, the good parents that they were, a seat at your wedding and an opportunity to have a relationship with their grandchildren. If they were good parents to you, yes, you owe them. And I'm so tired of that psychobabble that provides you a cop-out of mass proportions. You do. You owe them. The biggest cop-out in the world.
All right. If you're just joining, so this is an account called Doormat Mom that speaks pretty frequently on parent-child estrangement, and I think that people have really strong reactions to this video. I mean, in no small part because, like, when you go to like the actual video itself. Oh,
Yes.
hold on. Let me see if I can get to it. Well, okay. I'll just say this. When you go to it, there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that stitch this video and voice their fervent disagreement. The one person in particular was a mental health practitioner that responded, and then Doormat Mom responded to this person. So I'm going to follow the thread a little bit. She made this video. This was a video that was made in response, and then Doormat Mom responds in turn to this video. Let's just follow the whole trail, and then we'll respond here.
I'm going to say it. Yes, you do.
I was warned about making a video about Doormat Mom, but you know what? I just can't resist this video. There's a lot.
Who warned you? What committee sent you a letter to warn you?
My name's
Should I have received a warning?
Dr. Daniel Bates. Worked with couples and families for 15 years. I know a little bit about these issues, and not to give a big long exhaustive video, on what Doormat Mom said, but just a few thoughts. And the big one is I think what she's essentially asking for is a license for bad behavior. So she's saying, because I'm your parent, I should be able to behave in any way, shape, or form without any relational consequences. And you should just welcome me with open arms, regardless of how I behave, how I make you feel, how I impact you. And so, right off the bat,
I know that there are parents who respond that way. That's not what she's saying. She's saying that that kids have obligations towards their parents, and then she includes among those a seat at the wedding and whatnot. I didn't hear her in the video say that she gets licensed to do anything she wants. I mean, he's importing that. Maybe that's a synthesis of some of the other videos that he's seen from her, and then that's his conclusion. Fair enough, but at least in that video, that doesn't seem like an accurate representation.
I just disagree with that. I think parents, if we truly love our kids, we follow good, healthy relational habits and patterns and norms. We respect boundaries. That's how we earn relationships with our kids on an ongoing basis. And those are standards and expectations that are true of any relationship. So I don't know why parent-child relationship is an exception. And it seems like that's what she's asking. She probably wouldn't dismiss those relational expectations or standards in other contexts. You know, if I lie to you or abuse you or am deceitful or, you know, cross boundaries chronically, you know, okay, that's a red flag in a workplace relationship or in a marriage. But when it's a parent-child relationship, no, you owe it to me to accept me and love me regardless of what I do. I just say, no, that's horrendously inconsistent. I think as parents, we hold ourselves to the same standards we hold ourselves to in any other relational context. And there's consequences that come with crossing boundaries and misbehaving with our spouses and our bosses and our friends, as well as with our kids. So I think good parents hold themselves.
So he's placing kind of the family situation in kind of a contractual relationship. That's just like big picture. He's essentially saying, no, trust is earned, relationship is earned. It's reciprocal. It's like give and take. And if there's essentially unhealthy behavior, abusive behavior, then no, I'm under no obligation to continue being in relationship with you. We don't have any other relationship where like that kind of poor behavior is tolerated and then relationship is then demanded. So why would the parent relationship be like that? So that's one. So then she responds to this, which is interesting. Oh, go to my saved. Where is it at? Where is it at? She responds.
So, watch that whole video.
She's not pleased. Sorry.
About in the world that I hear from the So, watch that whole video shared by Daniel Bates, PhD, who seems to be thinking he's slaying some sort of dragon. It's a prime example of a mental health professional interpreting a situation wrongly and suited to his self-interest. Sort of what so many estranged adult kids are doing now, isn't it? You can never convince me that these mental health professionals, many of them, aren't part of the estrangement problem.
Man, all right. Here's the thing. When I've seen a lot of Doormat Mom, you know, I've seen a lot of her videos. I have a lot of like care in my heart for her. Like, I know. Here's the thing. Like, I know that she triggers a lot of people, especially folks that maybe had a mom that she reminds you of, and so that feels very adjacent. And so it's kind of like it just feels all wrapped up. For me personally, like I don't have my particular triggers, and I have them, but my triggers don't line up maybe with the constellation that Doormat Mom's putting out there. So I see her heart. Is that the right way to put it? I see a lot of pain, and I empathize, and not in a condescending, like, oh, I know, and then she's misguided kind of way. I just mean like in a human-to-human way of just like, oh, I see it. I see the pain, and it's coming out as anger and condescension and criticism, but there's pain under it. And so let's do this. Let's zoom out and like try to tackle the topic of like, do kids owe their parents something, and then to what degree? Because I think that the psychologist that she was responding to does have a point, but it's not an either or. I think that's what's making this whole conversation complicated. It's like, do I have a pen? Here's kind of what I'm seeing, is like, there's a threshold, right? It's like, I have, let's say, obligations, let's put out a dotted line, to my parent. Those are my obs. My obligations to a parent, maybe like up to a point, and then if there's like certain kinds of behavior that's negative, then let's say like the obligations that are like out here do not apply. If like essentially there's like intimacy here, let's call it that. Let's say there's intimacy. This pen's the worst. What am I doing? Let's say there's, isn't that satisfying? It's so much darker. Okay, there's intimacy that is not, it's not in focus because of this candle. Hold on. Get in focus. Okay, there's intimacy here. Let's say right here. That is not really an obligation. That's something that is either because of the quality of the relationship or the lack of quality is going to be there, or it's going to be missing. So I think that the intimacy in a relationship is conditional upon the actual, let's say, attunement, responsiveness, the substance shared between two adults. And that can be a lot or a little. But then the question is like, well, okay, but there's obligations. Why did I put OBS? There's an L. You get it. So there's obligations that are incumbent upon a kid in reference to their parents. Now, here's the misunderstanding that I see. It's like we don't have an obligation to feel intimacy, closeness, vulnerability, to accept the advice, full stop in every circumstance with our parents. My guess is that Doormat Mom would agree with that. Like, from what I've seen with her videos, I think she gets a lot of flack, but my guess is that she would agree with that. My guess is that she would think like, okay, not 100% intimacy is not guaranteed in every parent-child relationship. But what the question is like, well, hold on, like, what about this space? What's the space here that isn't conditional upon like just intimacy or kind of like this contractual exchange? And what I mean by that is like the psychologist, I forget his name, Daniel something. The psychologist was like, oh, all relationships are predicated upon reciprocity, and what I get out of it, what you get out of it, what you contribute, what I contribute. Intimacy, relationship is earned. All relationship is earned. And that is a very individualistic way to look at it. It's a Western way to look at it. It's a white way to look at it. It's like no one has viewed family that way in any culture across all time. Except recently. I don't think we actually say that very often. Like, there are some obligations that one has to a parent. The argument is, which are they? The question isn't do we or don't we? That's not reasonable, I don't think. And that might be unpopular. Like, I don't know, we'll find out in the chat here in a minute, but there's at least some. And these obligations are culturally confined, right? Like, because you have to ask the question, like, well, who enforces such obligations? And I would say at the very bare minimum, the state does. So, for example, you can't claim to be taking care of your mom in her old age and then not feed her, leave her in a wheelchair in a room by herself where she's unbathed and she's getting rash. Adult protective services would come in and then assume responsibility of a vulnerable adult. So we know at least in that circumstance, there are obligations. Like, I think about, like, at the bare minimum, like the obligations a parent has towards a kid or a kid has towards a parent are enforced by the state. Like we have almost like a cultural agreement that if you abuse a kid, we're going to take the kid out of your home. We're going to put him in a foster home. If you abuse a vulnerable parent, then we're going to remove that parent and put them in state care, right? So it's like at the bare minimum, we can say that there's an obligation to the degree that you accept responsibility for their care. You should do so towards their benefit. That's not an obligation, let's say, to take care of them in the way that they want. So like, mom might desire that you live with them. Like, I want you in my old age to take care of me in your house, and I want to live with you and your kids. You don't have an obligation towards that necessarily. Like, it might be that you have outside care that you incorporate. They might live in a different establishment. But okay, so in my mind, the bare minimum is like end of life care. I think that is an obligation that kids have towards their parents, is either to directly be involved in the end of life care, or at least to arrange that the state comes in and then governs their end of life care. So if you for example, if you hear, I don't know, that your mom lives by herself, she's kind of an older age, like there needs to be a wellness check if you sense that she might fall over, break a hip, and then like one day she could just like go quiet and no one hears from her. Like you or a sibling, somebody needs to be doing regular wellness checks, or at least calling the state to do a wellness check to like make sure she's okay. Like, I think you get what I'm saying. But there's like a shifting like gradient of agency there, because I've worked with many clients who have like homeless parents, for example, because they're addicts, and the reality is that they don't have the legal ability to enforce that dad goes into a care facility. Dad has every right to live on the streets if he wants to, and the programs that he could be using, he can't use because he's using a substance. That's happened. I've had 2 or 3 clients in that circumstance, where then you got to kind of accept, like, okay, dad doesn't want to receive the help that I think is best for him. He's at a certain age or ability level where I don't have the right to make medical decisions for him. Okay, that for the time being, he's got to do what he's got to do. So it's like, this is infinitely complicated, but just to summarize, to kind of like come full loop on this, I think that what we can say is like, okay, what do kids owe their parents? Bare minimum, end-of-life care and medical care, not in the sense that they're the direct caretaker, but that they at least are involved, or a sibling at least is involved in organizing the care, whether that's the state or a hospital coming in and taking care of them, or they directly. You get what I'm saying? Okay, fine, bare minimum. Is there something that to me is like, it's like right here. Okay, is there anything more than that? Is there any like relational? So just to kind of re-summarize this chart here for anyone who's like, hold on, what's that big drawing? It's like you could say there's 2 things here. There's like just like the basic. There's the basic, and then there's the relational. And the big question, I think that most people could agree on the basic thing of like end-of-life care needs to be thought of. I think that kids owe their parents that in some respect. That could look a lot of different ways. But then, hold on, what about the relational stuff? Like, because for my mom in her video, she said that, well, kids owe their or parents a seat at the wedding, owe their parents, I forget the other examples, some dimension of relational intimacy. She's saying, hey, there's like a quadrant of relationship that you owe your parents. And then the big disagreement is like types like myself, mental health practitioners and folks born under 1980 are like, no relationship is owed to a parent. Relationship is purely conditional upon how you behave. And if you're responsive, reciprocal, if you respect boundaries, if you're intrusive, that like relational is all present day behavior based. And I think what I've been struggling with is like no culture ever has thought that. And I know I'm going against probably my audience. My audience is like kind of shocked that I'm saying this right now, but I've been doing a lot of cultural survey recently, trying to kind of get to the basics of what we're dealing with here. And it's an undisputed fact that every culture, Eastern, African, Asian, Latin, all through history, has assumed there are some relational ingredients, some relational obligations endowed to kids in reference to their parents. Those have shifted and changed, and they're culturally bound, but there's some of them. And I don't think our culture knows what they are. And the reality is like, and I think that the Daniel Bates, right? The Daniel psychologist guy that we just listened to, he says it right. It's like, we can't get in the circumstance where someone has like full permission just to behave however they want and then to think that they are owed relationship, even if they're acting in an abusive, unhealthy, destructive way. On the other side, you have Doormat Mom who's saying, is like, hey, there's some parents who have loved their kids and have had good intentions. They made mistakes perhaps, and then I would maybe add on top, she didn't say this, but I would add on top, like I think there's parents who acted in ways that were destructive, that were not attentive to their kids' needs, by no malice, but the reality is that it was there. Like they let fear drive their relationship, and then that has pushed their kid away, but they're not narcissistic, malicious, exploitive people. They're misguided and acting in ways that are dysfunctional towards their family members, towards their kids, but they're not a threat to your safety on like a physical level, even though emotionally it's tumultuous. Like, okay, so that to me is the more interesting category. It's like, what do we do with those? What do we do with the parents who meant well but still hurt me? Like, like, and maybe there's a Venn diagram. Sometimes they did mean well and sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they were wrapped up in their own stuff. Sometimes they were wrapped up in their own thing. And okay, they don't know how to respect this boundary and that boundary, but at the same time, they're not hostile. Like it's inappropriate but not unsafe. Like, okay, so what do we do in those like particulars? That seems to be like the center of the Tootsie Pop, like that our culture doesn't know. And so one answer is like, well, you need to put up with it because we're family. That's like kind of the boomer solution. The boomer solution is like, well, I put up with the crap my family, like, in most circumstances that I've seen, I don't know about you, but the boomers often had worse family situations than the millennials or the Gen Zs or the Gen Xs did. All my stories of my grandparents' parents, like a lot of them CPS would have been called. Like the whole like, oh, well, I was beat with a switch. It's like yellow. Okay, so you can imagine there's all sorts of issues there. So that generation that experienced, I know not in every case, I'm not making generalities here, but the generation that arguably experienced something far worse, or at least marginally worse, decided to put up with their parents. Decided to be like, all right, I'm going to let things go. I'm going to just try to see the best. I'm going to try to see their intentions, and we're going to kind of make it work. And then that's the solution that they're trying to give to their kids. It's like, well, hello, this is the game. It's like, you got to look past it. We're family. It's blood. And then the millennials, Gen X, sometimes Gen Zs are like, hold on. Like, you ignored it, but that comes with a cost. Like the whole, like, just kind of push it down, let it go, don't think about it. That's not a neutral solution. That has costs associated with it. In large part, because you never confronted the anger in your dad, you have some of the anger, and you are maybe not aware of the anger in your own heart. Part of the way we grow as people is by confronting the things that we saw in our parents, maybe not even relationally with them, but at least in our own hearts, deciding it was bad and wrong and then choosing to do something different. So part of this internal process of what on the outside looks like being really critical of your parents is just also part of the self-differentiation of like, well, hold on, my parents did it this way. Do I want to do it that way, or do I want to do it a different way? And so it's like when the boomers said, all right, we're just going to like make it work with our parents, there had to be a lot of repression, suppression, a lot of things kind of bottled up and shoved away in that process. And the millennials and above and below are like, yeah, we don't want to do that. That has cost, and that has, it's like a drag on the system. It's like this baggage that I kind of have to carry, and I don't know what to do with that, because it makes it so that I can't even enjoy, the moments that I'm sharing with my family. It's the majority of it is fatigue. The majority of it is me gritting through this, and that's not the kind of life I want to live. So there's a value shift. One generation thought that was a baggage worth carrying. The other doesn't think so. And then my question is like, well, hold on, like, can we unpack the baggage and heal it I don't know, like, can we, Can we take the baggage, unpack it, heal it, and then, like, my solution, if you've worked with my work, or if you've seen my work at all, if you've been a part of estrangement.com, I have an event coming up on Monday where I'm going to be talking through this. So you can, if you comment the word event, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, you can come to it. If not, you can go to estrangement.com/live. Okay, because my take on this is, like, if we can heal the baggage of the past, then, and that's something we do individually. Like, our parents can't heal our stuff for us. Our kids can't heal our stuff for us. That's part of what you do in the deliberation of your own heart. Okay, if we heal the past, then we can assess the relationship based off the current day behavior in the present. And then, depending on how reciprocal or respectful or attentive, responsive our parent or kid, is, that does mediate the level of intimacy that we're going to share. And then the question of, like, well, hold on, what about that little piece that we owe, whether they're behaving good or not? That is a culturally bound question. Different cultures have different answers to that question. In our culture, in America in particular, but in other places, is changing its mind on that. That's just that's what's happening. And if we're going to say should, if we're going to say you should, even though your mom is negative, you should let her have a relationship with your grandchildren. Even though your dad is intrusive and doesn't respect your boundaries very well, you should listen to his advice sometimes and take his advice into consideration because he loves you after all. All he's trying to do is help. Where do we get that should? In my mind, it's like culturally or religiously. Because just based off the... where do we get our values from? That's a values question. And so if you're trying to say, well, you should do that, you're saying you should have a certain value. And then I'm like, hold on, but if you share a different value system, then what are you appealing to? Like, when we make moral criticisms, we have to make an appeal. The only neutral thing that you can appeal to that isn't religious, that isn't culturally bound, is something called pragmatism. Pragmatism means if you do this, it will end well for you. Do this because it makes sense and it leads to a good outcome. That's pragmatism, right? The logic just of, hey, you should, and people have tried to make that case, but I just don't think there's a good pragmatic case for the adult kid in this little bucket of experience. I think that's just the truth. I think that if you say to the kid, hey, you should have a relationship with your mom who's really negative and critical and listen to her advice sometimes because after all, she's just trying to help and that will end well for you. I think adult kids have realized, actually, if I'm trying to live a more comfortable, free, relaxing experience, not exposing myself to that is the better option, at least in the short term. And a lot of people then try that and then find out they're right. That stings, but I just think that's true. That getting distance, I'm not saying full cutoff, but I'm just saying getting distance from people who are acting in a way that is constantly fatiguing to you results in less fatigue. That's just the logic of it. But then you get back to this, hold on, no, there's a moral reason, and that's where we scratch the pragmatism thing off the list. Like, hold on, let me. So, okay, you should, you should. Okay. The you should argument needs to be either, I guess, like, let's say cultural, religious. I would say values here. I mean, that might be like a piece of cultural, religious, or pragmatic. And then in America, I mean, in the democratized kind of like, diverse world that we live in, that doesn't try to like shoehorn everything into one religion or shoehorn everything just into one set of culture, because we live in a diverse set of cultural values and a diverse set of religions, so it's like the larger cultural narrative is like, okay, let's try to be pragmatic here. But the pragmatism thing doesn't work, I think, when it comes to trying to convince adult kids to be in close relationship with their parents. Because I think if the boomer types, kind of zoomed out, I think they could relate to why the Gen Zs and the Gen Xers think that. Here's the exception to that. Man, I've seen it happen more times than not, where there's a complicated relationship with the boomer and then with their parents, whether they're born in the 20s, 30s, whatever. And it's like you hold on to that strain through the majority of adulthood, especially 30s, 40s, 50s. At least from the outside, as the kid, I'm thinking about my dad and his relationship with his dad, and my mom and her relationship with her mom. It's like, that looks like majority fatigue, 67% fatigue, and maybe some positive on the other end of it. But, then they get to this elderly spot, this old age. And running into your mortality does one of two things. It makes you worse or it softens you up. I don't know. You talk to like old people, like old folks, they either get more entrenched in what was wrong in the first place, or they soften. And there's this sweet softening and repair that can happen in these end years that I think a lot of boomers would say makes it worth it, it's such a deeply meaningful experience for them, and they are so grateful for it. And it's not necessarily in the appearance of dad finally apologized or mom finally admitted. It's more like there's a softness and a sweetness and a vulnerability that then a tenderness that really touches something deep in the heart that would be a loss to miss out on. So when it comes to the pragmatic thing, the pragmatic case, just to summarize again, of hey, you should have a relationship with your parents. It's like you either on a cultural values level enforce that, you either on a religious level enforce that, or on a pragmatic enforce that. And that's where the conversation is being trapped, because this is the only neutral one that we can have larger cultural conversation about, because people have different religions, people have different cultures, people have different values. But pragmatism is the case that we're trying to make here, because it's it'll end well for you if you do so. And my guess is for a lot of adult kids, they feel it's not really working for me. The longer I hang out with them, the worse it is. And then years go by and it still feels worse, because they're still intrusive, or they're still negative, or they're still critical, or they still won't stop at their advice, or they still don't really listen to me when it comes to the grandkids. So it's there's a strain. But then there's the possibility of elderly sweetness? How do we call it? How do we call it that? Elderly, let's call it that, sweetness. That some people experience. I wrote it off the board, whatever. And so one could say, hold out, because maybe in old age, the parent will soften up, and then you'll get to enjoy that 10-year period, whatever. And then that'll make it worth it. Maybe, maybe not. And it's not really a guarantee. So the pragmatic case, I just think, is weak when it comes to trying to strong-arm adult kids into having a relationship with their parents, because you're depending on their subjective experience, and their subjective experience is through the eyes, is through the lens of their worldview and their values and what's happening right now, their emotional narrative, so and depending on the parent, especially, if the parent is genuinely abusive and dysfunctional, it's not very pragmatic to continue to be in a relationship. Okay. So then that leaves these other two, the religious and the cultural ones. I've talked about this a lot. You can find probably different videos of me talking about the religious thing. I mean, depending on the religion, there's different mandates for honor your parents, honor your father and mother, and all these different kinds of things. The only religion I know well is Christianity, and so within Christianity, I'm just checking we're still alive. Is everyone here? I've just been on a rant lately. Okay, so within Christianity, the only thing is David resisted Saul when Saul was being dysfunctional, if you know the story. Saul was being dysfunctional as in hurling spears at him and trying to hunt him and kill him. So like Saul was a dysfunctional father-in-law, and David resisted him and set a boundary. I think that the Bible has plenty of examples of boundaries and getting distance from people. Old and New Testament. I think Paul, I think, what is it, Ephesians or Timothy? I think it's Timothy. Timothy 3 is like, here's a list of all these dysfunctional behaviors. Don't even have dinner with such people. So, yeah, obviously, in Scripture, there's a Christian Scripture, there's a motivation to be forgiving, and obviously, like you're forgiving, but that doesn't translate immediately into proximity, into relationship, into trust. Not even with God. Like, God doesn't have equal relationship with everyone. He forgives everyone, but he has intimacy with those who draw near him in faith and repentance. So it's kind of the same thing with us. So, okay, that's the religious one. As far as like, oh, you should, there's still an aspect where it depends on the reciprocity that you're experiencing with your parent. And if there is dysfunctional behavior, in Christian terms, if they're holding on to sin and idolatry, then no, we do not give free license for people to act destructively with their sin in our lives. Okay, that's religious. Might be different for Sikhism, Islam. I don't know those religions well, so I won't speak on it. Okay, then the cultural values thing. It's like, it's kind of subjective. I know many immigrant kids, for example, that are never cutting off mom, because mom just sacrificed everything, got them to this country, and like, so it would just be such a gesture of disrespect and ingratitude to set a boundary there that they're just not gonna. I mean, I think that adoption, similar, is like, they adopted me and did all these things for me, and why would I cut them off? I think that there's lines even there where it makes sense. If someone's acting abusively and dysfunctionally to a degree where it's hostile, then yeah, you do still need to get boundaries and differentiate, maybe even cut off. Sometimes, depends on the circumstance. Other times, you're going to have these cultural values that keep you together. You're a lot more likely to hold in on a relationship, kind of reflecting kind of more that boomer mentality of, we're going to put up with this because that's family, because family's family. And then maybe the average white kid who grew up here in a city in the United States. So you're going to be 30, 40%, 60% more engaged in that relationship than, that's a cultural thing, right? So then we're kind of back to this. So just to summarize, wow, went on a long rant here, but it was interesting. It was interesting to think through this with you. I've been trying to wrap my mind around this dynamic for a bit. Okay, so we have like what's like just the basic obligations, and again, that's defined by end of life care, and like you can think like the basic obligations that you would owe to any vulnerable person, the basic compassion that you would share with anyone in humanity, with the bonus of like you have a particular attachment to this person. They raised you, they got you on the on-ramp to life, you're going to help them get them to the off-ramp of life. Okay, and that can look a lot of different ways, but if you don't do that, the state will, so that's the idea there. Adult protective services can be called just like child protective services. We have agreements within our culture that there are certain ways that elderly, vulnerable adults and young kids need to be treated, and I think that adult kids are bound on the other side of that. Okay, so there's the basic, but then there's the relational. And I think that there probably is a margin here that we do owe even to dysfunctional parents. But that's my culture and that's my value. And that has, because the only way that you can enforce this, the you should is pragmatic, which we just talked about, is cultural or values driven or religious. When you make a moral claim, you're making an appeal to a code that someone belongs to. And so when you say you should, you're saying you either have consented to a worldview or consented to it, or you were born into, and that has endowed obligations to you, into a particular culture, into a religious construct, or at least pragmatism, at least logic. You can appeal at least to logic. And yeah, I don't know if that actually adds tons of clarity. I guess that's my diagnosis on the situation. My thought on this piece is that we aren't outright critical. And we speak with a basic tone of respect and dignity. We don't let them have it. We don't vent and lay into them. That's my values. I don't know if they're yours. These are my cultural values. They're informed by my religious values. And, well, founded on them. And I think that you don't lay into them. I think that you're disrespectful. I think that you would be more understanding to a parent than you would to a postman, to a waitress. Like, when you go to a restaurant, if the waiter screws up your order, you don't go back to the restaurant. I don't think the same, loose ties should be applied to the parent-child relationship. I think there should be a thicker bond, more understanding, more willingness to resolve than that. How far up? I guess that is depending on your parent. I don't think we should, according to the person who criticized Doormat Mom, the parent relationship is as sticky as the waitress relationship. Like, that's completely conditional upon behavior. And I just wonder if there's like a small margin where we're going to be, like, even if he or she is unkind, we're going to be extra generous and kind. That doesn't mean giving them the ability to make decisions in your life and giving them access and giving them proximity. I don't think that. I don't think that someone is owed proximity. The story of King Saul and David didn't owe King Saul proximity when Saul was hurling a spear at him and trying to chase him around in the woods and end him, So obviously we set boundaries. Like, there's a generosity of spirit, I would add on top, and maybe this is me making a pragmatic case a little bit, that you would be more willing to check in back later and see if there's change than you would with a restaurant. If you got food poisoning at a restaurant, you may never eat at that restaurant again. You have no obligation to go back and see if the restaurant changed and if they figured out their recipes or their health code stuff and now they won't get food poisoning. But in a parent relationship, I would hope that folks would be just a bit more open-minded to check back in at different checkpoints to see if there's change. There might not have been. To go back and revisit the restaurant, maybe not to eat there, but at least just to walk into the door and kind of look around and just see, like, all right, do we see any, like, health code score things? Do we see any, like, bleach buckets under the table? Do we see, like, people wiping stuff down? Like, how does things look? Like, there's a curiosity. That's the right word. There's a curiosity to the potential for them to change. And if they show signs of change, an open-mindedness to open conversations. Like, it's not that they are earned intimacy, but maybe with your parents, you would give more, not second chances, that's not the right word. Just curiosity. You would be more willing to extend a curiosity, because second chance implies that you're extending trust, and I think trust is earned, but you're more open to that dialogue of establishing trust, something along those lines. I have to figure out a faster way to say that. I'm being tangential here. Does that make sense? What do we think? What has the good people in the chat thought and saith about such matters? Well, all right, hold on. Hold on. Huzzah, there we go. Oh, that's awkward. Tell me in the chat, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? How's this sitting with you? Yeah, Michael says transaction. I think it needs to be more than a transaction. It can't just be that. That seems to be where the conversation is stunted from the adult-kid point of view. Like, everyone who's commenting on this from the adult-kid point of view seems to be like, we need to keep things in a contractual place. And I'm like, really? Like, that's it? Like, I just think that it is so hard to define what above and beyond, because obviously there's circumstances where people are abusive, and we don't think that people should be bound and locked up into circumstances where people are abusive. And then most of the abusive parents are appealing to all these, well, you should be a good person, and why would you abandon your parents? And it's just tricky. So I'm trying to take on tricky territory. All right. Now everyone should be able to see the chat. How we doing, chat? What about when it's their 7th chance? Yeah, and when I say chance, when I'm saying like check back in and extend curiosity, it's not even really you're giving someone a chance. It's not like, all right, come back in and hang out with my kids again. All right, let's go grab coffee and hang out, and I'm, coming back to the cookout. It's like short phone conversations just to suss out, has anything changed since last time? Is it going in a positive direction? If it continued in this direction, would I want that, and would that be good for both of us? And you know what I mean? So it's like you're not opening yourself back up to abuse, or you're not really extending vulnerability. I don't think an extension of curiosity is necessarily an extension of vulnerability. Does that make sense? Yeah, for the sake of understanding them as a human. Yeah. It's like as an observer. Yeah, it's like you extend curiosity as an observer. I just think this is the first step for a lot of people. So for any parents, I'm assuming, Doormat Mom, maybe you're watching this. It's just like I really sympathize with the like shut off, sealed, no curiosity. I have you as a parent figured out. I'm in the right. Like, I just think that is from hurt. I don't think that's the grown up way to handle it. I think there can be conviction with warmth, and then an openness to curiosity as things evolve and change. That's what I hope to see with adult kids and with parents. Like, I hope that parents don't just kind of come to a closed off kind of decided position with their kids without a similar curiosity for like, hey, maybe things are changing. Maybe I need to have a curiosity around my own actions in the relationship. And okay, yeah, let's keep it moving in the chat. What else? I hate dead air when people are reading the chat. So here's a little tune as I read. That's too silly sounding. What are we doing here? What happened? Where'd the chat go? What's wrong? Why? I don't know what's wrong. Ah. How frustrating. Come on. Oh, wait. Did that make... Why? Why did that work? All right. I'm going to fix this so that everyone can read the chat with me. Sorry for the delay, everybody. Don't leave! Ooh. Soft emotive music. If you have a question about this whole topic, dive in with me. Let's figure this out together. I'd be happy to engage it with you and try to think about this with you. So, what are your questions? What are your questions about this difficult, crazy parent-child estrangement knot that you may or may not be facing? Tell me about it. There we go. All right. The good people can see the chat. All right. Sorry for the tech issues. All right. And we back. So Wit says, I don't know how to continue a relationship in this situation. They want us to pretend like nothing happened. In my mind, like, the acknowledgement question, because I know a lot of people that are like, I don't really want to continue in a relationship if there's not acknowledgement of the negative behavior, of the past thing that happened. And I think that there's certainly a justification depending on the circumstance where that it's like, well, yeah, that's so pervasive in the relationship. Like, we can't, it's like a, I don't know, the elephant is so big in the room, there's no room left in the room. Like, we have to name the elephant. And the logical options are, it's like, you either name the elephant so that we can get the elephant out of the room and then we can enjoy being in the room together, or you do just allow the elephant to sit in the room, and that would be something. And that isn't necessarily like suppression or repression. That's like a decision to consent to being in the relationship with the presence of the dang elephant. And it's not like you should do that. I'm not saying that that's like the better or moral or good thing to do. I just think you can do that. Some people choose to do that, and when you consent to it, it's an expression of your own agency. It's not like you're doing something out of compulsion, or you're doing something's not happening to you. You very could just be like, no, I'm not going to engage in the relationship if you're not going to acknowledge that. You're allowed to do that if you want to. And my take is you're allowed to continue on in the relationship without the acknowledgement if you want to. That's also an option. Because there's nothing in their acknowledgement that actually gives you something you need in your like identity, or in your self-worth, and your self-worth, your identity, your confidence is not dependent on them. It's not dependent on their affirmation. That's something that's outside of them. And so then the question is like, okay, that's certainly going to limit the scope. That's going to limit the intimacy that we're able to share. But do I still want that smaller, more limited scope, with them? So I can't, they're not going to admit that they were wrong or that they did anything wrong. Okay, well then we're not going to talk about that. I'm probably not going to open up to you to the degree that I would have if you would have repaired and acknowledged and whatnot. But is there a 5%, is there a 10% relationship that I want with you? That's maybe more surface, admittedly, but I can still be authentic within that, on that surface. I can still be me on that surface. It's a choice. I don't think someone should or shouldn't. I just think it's a choice. That's kind of how I think through that piece. A lot of generational trauma, certainly. What do you do when you visit? I can't highlight apparently without that being weird. What do you do when you visit and all you hear about is the golden child and all the good they're doing, the enabling parent? I will not enable, so coming in contact, even for a few hours, is exhausting. The exhaustion, I think, is you holding back your grief and your anger. That's the exhaustion. So the two options then is to express and have a confrontation with your parents about that perceived favoritism. Or at least that the way that they're affirming your sibling is, you would like some of that affirmation too, and it might be that they have a very equal opinion of you, but it's easier to express it for them. Or what's more likely is that one sibling always, this is just maybe a good piece on sibling favoritism, one kid always jives with the parent's personality more than the other. It's self-evidently true, isn't it? Like, one kid just behaves more similarly to one parent or the other parent than other kids. And so it makes it easier to relate. It makes it easier to build intimacy when you have common interests, common ways of engagement. Now, the job of a mature parent is to see beyond that, and then to have the curiosity to build intimacy reciprocally with every one of their kids, even if they don't relate to them on personality or interest levels in the same degree. It's not appropriate. It's immature to only build a relationship with the one that you vibe with, and then to keep the other ones at an arm's length, or to moralize it and make it like they're bad. Like if you have two like a super business-oriented, conscientious, willpower-driven, let's work out, let's build a business kind of people in a family, and they're always vibing, talking about their businesses, it's incumbent upon the dad, let's say in this moment, to also take interest in the artsy free spirit kid that isn't, working on their PR and their lifts and their business, but, is working their normal job and loves doing their art on the side and takes a lot of delight and joy in it. Or their kid who's like, playing Dungeons, Dragons, collecting Pokemon. Even if, sports dad can't relate to the Pokemon, doesn't have interest in Pokemon, you got to figure it out. You got to figure out how to relate. You got to take an interest, not because you're interested in Pokemon, because you're interested in the kid. But that takes a lot of maturity and awareness that not every parent has. So I often find it's not like that the parent loves the kid different. That's the kid-like interpretation of it. I'm unworthy, something's wrong with me. I'm not loved as much. Likely not. Likely, I don't know your family. Well, maybe it is that. But in all likelihood, it's just the laws of personality and mutual interest. Like, it's just easier. It's easy. Not like they love your sibling more. It's just easier with your sibling. And that's because something's wrong with you. It's just because interests and personalities are not evenly distributed. It's like a way to make it less personal, I think. It's just like, it's not as easy. That's fine. I think about that in my family. Like, almost every family, if you ask the kids who's the favorite, all of them can say it. Like, in the ones who can't, wow, good job on the parents for, like, distributing, being even. But, like, I don't know, in every family, like, in the comments, who's the favorite in your family for your mom? Say it. Say it in the comments. Who's your mom's favorite kid if you have siblings? There's always a favorite. Who's your dad's favorite? Uh-huh. Who is it? I know it. And we can internalize that as they love them more, but I think the more accurate would be they vibe with them more. And when you can see that, then it's not that it actually makes any of it okay. Like, obviously you have emotional needs, and if those are emotional needs, those relational needs to be seen, soothed, loved, were not met, we're not experienced because your parent couldn't get over the personality hurdles, the interest hurdles. Like, if your only way your dad knew how to connect with you was through Pokemon or through working out, that's on him. So you have a genuine frustration. I'm just saying that it's too simple to say it's like a love difference or a worthiness difference. Ha! Okay, everyone in the chat, my brother, me. Hey, good on you for owning it. Like, I feel like I know in my family, I'm dad's. Yep. I'm my dad's favorite. Totally. Hold on. Yeah, I'm an only child, and I still wasn't the favorite. Oh, Kelly, that breaks my heart. Yeah, that's certainly an experience. Yeah, I think it hurts as an only kid too to see that your dad like has like a friendship with some like third party 20-year-old or 25-year-old or something, and you can tell that he enjoys that, whether business or mentor relationship, more. That stings. I've seen that a few times. Yeah, me. Yeah, my in-laws compared it to Jesus and John the Beloved versus the other apostles. The joke in the family is it leaves my husband as Judas. To her, oh gosh. Yeah, I'm not saying any of this, don't misunderstand me, to justify anything. I'm always a fan of like, let's try to see it the most objective way possible and then respond to that. Let's respond authentically, but just not to the narrative, to the story, but to the full objective reality. And the objective reality is complicated most times. Do parents have favorites? Yes. Is it because they love them more? Not always. Sometimes yes, but most of the time because they vibe with their personalities. So if we can jump out of that, I think that it doesn't attack our identity as deeply. Does that make sense? Even though genuinely it probably resulted in real emotional neglect. That's just the truth. Oh, nice. All right, is anything happening on YouTube? Oh, there's people on YouTube also. Hi. Let's go check in on YouTube and see how we're doing, and then we'll see what's next. Sorry, I'm resizing. This is where we need a jam. Ooh, mysterious. Ooh. Hello from South Korea. Heyo, heyo. All right. YouTube chat showing up. Yep, we're here. Yeah, what if I'm not interested in my parents' life? I'll answer that in a second. Let's just kind of get a feel for the whole YouTube. How's YouTube been doing here? Okay, this is interesting. Yeah, if it feels dangerous, so checking back in with them feels dangerous. I think that's still because there's an emotional need that you desire for them to meet. If their acknowledgement somehow validates you, then it feels dangerous. If it feels dangerous, if that's the adjective, then there's something on the line emotionally for you that likely should be dealt with and settled and wrapped up in your own heart. My wife's calling. I probably gotta go. What time is it? 11:10? Yeah, I gotta get going. Yeah, that's something that we work through in therapy. My hope is that you wouldn't have to jump back in with 3 missed calls from my wife. Okay, that really means I gotta go. All right. Yeah, I gotta leave. I'm interested to keep talking, but you can jump in the comments on the replay if you want to. All right, sorry to come to a radical close, but I so enjoyed spending time with you. Yeah, this is good. I think that we need to further our thinking on obligations, needs, how to kind of find those in-between spaces that are value aligned, that feel safe, and yet keep an open door for the possibility of relationship. That's the territory we're trying to swim in and figure our way around. Care about all of you. I'll talk to you next time, all right? See you Thursday. Let's do a live on Thursday afternoon. See you there. Bye for now. Bye-bye. Ooh,